So we said Isaiah served under which 5 kings? Ahaz. Yep. And Ahaz was bad. Really bad. Okay. Yeah. Just all around bad. Who else? Huh? Manasseh. Yeah. Was Manasseh good or bad?
He was like both, wasn't he?
Yes. How did he start off?
Bad.
Bad, and then he became good. Who else? Yep.
Uzziah.
There you go. Uzziah. Or you can call him Azariah. Was he good or bad? Started off good, yeah. Ended really bad. Hey, Cody. Who else? Mm-hmm. There you go. Jotham.
I'll take number 4 for Hezekiah.
Sound like Jeopardy there, Chuck.
Yeah,
I'll take Hezekiah for 400. That's right. He didn't get it in the form of a question. Somebody else could still snag it.
Who is Hezekiah?
There you go. All right. Jotham, was he good or bad?
He was good. He had a bad.
He was a meh. Didn't really do much. Can't say too much about him. So he was a meh. All right. What about Hezekiah?
Good.
Good.
He was a
Good. Yeah. And I think you can mainly say with Hezekiah, he was good, and then he just kind of ended with an oopsie. There you go. So, all right. Yeah. So there's the 5 kings that Isaiah served under, and Isaiah begins his letter or his series of prophecies by reminding the people of who they were supposed to be, of what they were supposed to be like, that they were supposed to be holy, that they were supposed to be living these good lives, and instead they just kept messing up. And it was more than just like, oh, oops, I did, this small thing. It was like really, really bad stuff on a consistent basis. They weren't taking care of the poor. In fact, they were manipulating the poor by like stealing their land and then forcing them into slavery. They didn't care about how people were treated, and so it was just bad all around. They got into sacrificing to idols and such that they weren't supposed to, all kinds of different stuff. So it wasn't good. But Isaiah still holds out hope for a future rescuer to come in and redeem Israel and make it what it was supposed to be. So God gives Israel every single chance of success that He can, and they still don't. They're still not righteous. What kind of things did God provide for Israel to give them opportunities to succeed? Everybody tired this morning?
A wee bit.
A wee bit? Yes, there's the wine press. He expected a harvest. Walls. Yeah. Walls. / watchtower. Which was what? I need a marker. Yeah, those aren't any better, unfortunately.
Well, okay.
That's action.
There you go. Land. Yep. Whoops. land, which was land. Yeah. And then I got to get back into this and see, but I think he gives them like the what?
Dance floor.
Dance floor?
Get out.
Oh,
Wrong book. I've been reading this.
What?
That series.
No, the wine press is the harvesting thing. I think I need to go back into the text. I think he provides like the stuff that the vines grow on, trellises, something like that. And
Look it up when you text.
yeah, that's in chapter 5. So, but soil is the land. We already talked about that. I don't know what they're called. It's a trellis.
Oh.
Okay, there you go.
Okay.
And I think it's the law. It's to help guide them into what they're supposed to be. So, yeah. So Ahaz gets under attack by which kings? 2 kings.
Isaiah.
What?
Isaiah.
No.
Probably already did. Dude.
He was already dead by then.
See? Manasseh.
No. Messiah? What's that say?
Manasseh. People back then even know how to
Do you? All right. Ahaz is under attack by
Aaron.
Israel and Aram. Yeah.
Oh.
All right.
You have
It doesn't say anything about
It doesn't?
anything else. I think
Forget I
there's
said
only 3.
Okay. Forget I said that. All right. So Ahaz is under attack by Israel and Aram because they wanted Judah to align with them to fight against Assyria because Assyria is really starting to grow and to conquer many nations. And Ahaz seeks help from whom? Whatever you're supposed to say. Does he go to God? No. Who does he go to?
Another human. No.
What?
Was it Syria?
It was Assyria. Yeah, Judah said, no, I don't think I want to help you guys out. And so he goes to Assyria and he says, hey, can you take out Israel and Aram for me? Because they were really putting the pressure on Judah. And God said, no, that is not what I wanted you to do. How does God view Assyria? Does he view them? Huh? Yeah, he does view them as, he's not happy with Assyria, and we see that quite a bit. How else does God view Assyria?
Well, he's using them as a tool to discipline Israel.
Yeah, and not just Israel, but all the nations. And so that's why Assyria is growing, is because God is allowing them to grow so they can punish the nations around them. That God has said, I've had enough. Because it's not just Israel and Judah that are doing these terrible things of not treating people right. And so God is ending the reigns of other kingdoms so that he can punish them for their sins. But does Assyria just do what God tells them? Or do they go too far? They go way too far. And God says, nope, that ain't right. And so he's going to punish Assyria as well. And who comes after Assyria? Babylon. Who comes after Babylon?
Medo-Persia?
Yep. Yeah, the Medes first, and then Persia comes, and yeah. Huh?
They're the same people.
Basically. Yeah, and then it's Alexander the Great, and then the Romans, or the Greeks, and then the Romans, and just keeps going from there, and blah 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 blah. So, all right, so we'll go into chapter 15 and 16. Let's read through that. I think we started over. What? Yes, I do. You got to do it standing up now too. So. All right.
There's 23 verses.
That's just one.
Hang on. Yeah.
No, that's all of them.
Yeah.
That's both chapters.
Yeah. All right. All right. So 2 verses each. Start us off, Weston.
Absolutely. A prophecy against Moab.
R.
Ar in Moab is ruined, destroyed in the night. Ker in Moab is ruined, destroyed in the night. Dibon goes up to its temple, to its high places to weep. Moab's walls over Nebo and Medeba. Every head is shaved and every beard cut off. In the streets they wear sackcloth on the roofs, and in the public squares they all wail, prostrate with weeping. Heshbon and Elilah cry out; their voices are heard all the way to Jahaz. Therefore the Armim of Moab cry out, and their hearts are faint.
My heart cries out over Moab. Her fugitives flee as far as Zor, as far as Sikue.
Sure.
What is the second one?
There you go. It's like Worcestershire. There we go. Just go on.
They go up to the hill to Luthith.
Sure.
Weeping as they go. On the road to Horonaim, they lament their destruction.
Let's pause there right quick. Does anybody else notice how interesting it is that usually Eli gets all the words? Eli's not here for one day, and all of a sudden everybody's gonna get them. All right.
Huh? Eli sits over there where Hudson's at.
Yeah. So, all right, go ahead and get back into it. Take it for 6.
Nimrim are dried up. The grass is withered. The vegetation is gone, and nothing is green. Nothing green is left.
Therefore, the abundance they have gained and what they have had laid up, they carry away over the brook of the willows. For a cry has gone around the land of Moab. Her wailing reaches to Eglon. Her wailing reaches to Beer Elim.
The waters of Diamond are full of blood, but I will bring still more upon them, and upon the fugitives, Moab, and upon those who remain in the land. Send lambs and as tribute to the ruler of the land, from Selwa across the desert to the mountain of the daughter of Zion.
I thought, fluttering birds pushed from the nests, so are they the Moab and the forest of Rimmon. Make up your mind, Moab said.
Render.
A decision. Make your showers of contact. Finally, hide the fugitives. Do not mistake.
Yep.
Let the Moabite fugitives stay with you, be their shelter from the destroyer. The oppressor will come to an end, and destruction will cease. The aggressor will vanish from the land. In love, a throne will be established. In faithfulness, a man will sit on it. On one from the house of David, one who, in judging, seeks justice and spreads the cause of righteousness.
We have heard of Moab's pride. How great is her arrogance, of her counsel, her pride and her innocence. But her goats are empty. Therefore the Moabites wail. They wail together from Moab, lamenting and for the raisin cakes of
Haraseth.
The fields of Heshbon withered, the vines of
Simba. Yeah, no, it's actually Simba, but yeah, no, I heard the same thing.
the waters of the nation have trampled down the choicest vine, which once is gathered and spread toward the desert. Their shoots spread out and went as far as the sea. So I weep as Jazer weeps for the vines of Simba, Heshbon and Elilah.
Sure.
I drench you with tears, the shouts of joy over your
Ripened.
And over your harvest have been built.
Joy and gladness are taken away from the orchards. No one sings or shouts in the vineyards. No one treads out the one presses. For I have put an end to the shouting. My heart laments for Moab like a harp. My inmost being for Kir-Hitheth.
When Moab appears at her high place, she only wears herself out. When she goes to her shrine to pray, it is to no avail. This is the word the Lord has already spoken concerning Moab. But now the Lord says, within 3 years, as a servant bound by contract would count them, Moab's splendor and all her many people will be despised, and her survivors will be very few and feeble. Alright. Anything in there that you guys noticed, thought was interesting, had any other concerns about?
First one, I guess.
Yeah?
Is it literally, like, are they really bald and beardless?
Okay, so that's a good point. Okay, so, and we're going to get into that a little bit more. So, stop looking in my head. All right. So in the Near Eastern cultures, for the most part, what you saw was like a beard was kind of a sign of pride, right? So like when you look at like all these kids books and everything, kids Bibles and all that, show like David is clean shaven and all this, false. Get all those images out of your head, okay? Those are actually like highly inaccurate. Okay, they're terribly inaccurate. Because they had full beards. Like as soon as they could start growing their beards, you did so, because that was like you're, as far as men go, that was kind of your sign as as a man. And so
Hey, I've seen women with beards.
yeah, it's okay for women if they need to, that they can get rid of it. But a perfect example of this, okay, is actually from when David is king, because so shortly after David finally establishes his throne, he goes and finds out that one of the nations around him, the king, actually dies, and so David sends some ambassadors to that king to the new king to say, hey, I'm so sorry for your loss. They get there, and the new king's advisors are telling him, oh, David isn't actually concerned about you. He's not really here to say, I'm sorry about your loss. He's here to scope out the land so he can start, making plans to take your territory. So the king actually sits there and takes all the men that David just sent as ambassadors, and he shaves half of their beard. He only leaves half a beard. And then the really weird thing too is that he takes the clothes that they're wearing and he cuts out a slot around their butt, so they have to try and walk back to their homeland like this. And here's the thing, what? Yeah, it's really weird. And so and he has to know that he's going to make David mad with this, but he sends him back, and David finds out about it, and he stops him along the way, and he says, okay, stay where you're at. Just hang out there. Don't come back right now. And it's not because of the clothes, because David could easily just say, here's a new, clothes. That's just weird. Don't go around like that. No one wants to see that. Okay? No, what David actually tells them is, and stay here until your beards have grown back. Okay? Yeah. Yeah, I know. It's like a long time. I mean, either they're really going to stay there until their beards grow back. I mean, or they've got some magic thing that they put, some kind of oil or something like that they put on their skin to make the oil, the hair come back, or they're gonna trim their beards down and let it get even again and kind of go from there. But that's how important a beard was to them. Okay, he caught on to verse 2. It specifically said that every head is shaved and every beard cut off. I mean, it's this way of when Babylon and Assyria come into the different countries, they'll go up to the men and go, "Hey-ya," and chop off the beard, as well as killing people. But I mean, that was seen as just as terrible a thing to do to the men as it was all the rest of this stuff. Okay, so yeah, so when it says every head is shaved, every beard is cut off, it's actually talking about that. That's not metaphor for anything else. That's literally they're going to cut their beards off. So, any other things that you found as interesting or curious, or what in the world is going on?
Just so you know, the word that many of us have trouble on, it's Celestia.
Sure.
Just telling you.
All right. Anything else? All right. So one thing that we have to remember here as we're going through this section of the text is that God has when Elijah gets done with the prophets of Baal, Elijah's sitting here saying, God, I don't want to do this anymore. I'm tired. I'm frustrated and everything else. And God says, okay, go anoint Elisha to succeed you as prophet. I want you to go anoint Jehu, who's going to be the next king of Israel, and I want you to anoint Hazael to be the next king of Aram. Okay? God has complete control over the world. He has complete control. And so just as he's got the authority to establish kings over the rest of the world, he has the authority to punish them as well. And so when what we entered into last week with chapter 13 is basically what we're going to be covering up until we get to chapter 35. Because starting in chapter 13, God starts announcing his judgment on the world. Okay? So we're going to see God announce judgment on Babylon, and on Syria, on Egypt, and all these other different countries. This morning we're looking at Moab. And so that's kind of where we're at. So God doesn't mention the rest of the world, like North or South America or Asia or Europe, right? He doesn't specifically sit there and go, and for the Aztecs, will bring down this judgment. Why doesn't he talk about the rest of the world?
Nobody knows about them.
Yeah. Does it affect Israel?
Probably not.
No. All right. What's these particular countries? How are they directly affecting Israel?
Directly.
Exactly. How have they been treating Israel and Judah?
Probably not good.
No. They've been harassing them. They've been influencing stuff, and so this is where we're at with these nations. Okay? Now, we have to remember what Paul tells us about the rest of the world. Because Paul starts off in Romans and he says that even if you didn't grow up in church or in a synagogue or whatever, you didn't grow up with the text, should you still be able to see God in the world? Yeah. How?
With your eyes.
Yeah, what do you mean with your eyes? You're right.
Through the works of others.
Through the works of others? How else? Nature? Okay. You should be able to very clearly look around you and be like, there's something to all this. Almost like someone directly put it together. Okay? And so this is what Paul has tried to suggest, is that yes, that there's a natural order to things, that God has put it all together, so you should be able to look at the world and see there's clearly a God. That's making a lot of noise. Let's go ahead and quit. I'm just going to take that.
Do it, please.
Okay. All right. So that's what we're going to be going through for some time now in Isaiah, is all these different judgments against the world. But what have we said about the judgments? Is Isaiah strictly a book of you're going to die, and you're going to die, and you're going to die? Is that all Isaiah is?
Yeah.
What else is in Isaiah?
There's hope.
Yeah. There's hope in the book of Isaiah. And so this morning we're reading through chapter 15 and 16, and it's all about Moab. And God is definitely saying the judgment's coming to Moab, but he's also crying out over it. Okay? And this is one of the most interesting parts of this chapter right here, is that God is legitimately crying out at the destruction that Moab's going to face. Moab, just like we said, has been one of those people that's been a thorn in the side of Israel. When Israel is trying to enter the promised land and Balaam is told to curse the people, does Balaam succeed in cursing the people? No. Tries to 3 times, and what does he do instead? Blesses. All right? But right after that incident, Balaam comes up with a different plan. Do you guys know what he did? Balaam comes up with a plan where he gets the Moabite women to go into the camp and tempt the men. And so all these Israelite men are sleeping around with the Moabite women and doing things that they're not supposed to. And God's people get punished because of it. Okay? So, I mean, from the get-go, Moab has been a thorn in the side of Israel. And so, yet, even through all this, even through all the punishment that we see that Moab's going to endure, God's still saying, my heart cries out over Moab. And so it's this continued sign that we're seeing throughout the text that God doesn't want to just punish people, that ultimately he wants the world, all of his creation, to join back with him in holiness. But he can't stand in the presence of unholiness, and so as long as people are doing that, he's trying to provide grace and time for people to turn, but if they're not going to do it, then he's got to punish and destroy. We get into verses 4, the second part of verse 4 there, and verse 5 in chapter 15. Chapter 16, sorry. Take a look at that, and who do you think is being talked about? Chapter 16, verse 4 and 5. Second part of verse 4.
From the destroyer, you
mean? Second part of verse 4. Chapter 16. It says the oppressor will come to an end. Who's talked about there?
I'm going to say Assyria.
Nope.
Because they're the one who's destroying everybody at the moment.
Chapter 16, second part of verse 4, starting with the oppressor will come to an end. Second part of verse 4 and verse 5. Who's being talked about?
Oh, Jesus.
There you go. It says, one from the house of David. Okay? And so this is the really interesting thing, is that right in the middle of the judgment against Moab, God brings up the coming Messiah. All right? And it's interesting strictly because, does Jesus come from Moab? Nope. Okay. Somebody else other than Jeff, please start answering, okay? No, Jesus does not come from Moab. Jesus' only relation to Moab is the fact that Ruth was a Moabite and she marries into the family. All right? But God is specifically bringing up the Messiah with this judgment on Moab. All right? And so the message is in the middle of all this judgment, God is saying at some point in the future, all this destruction, all this chaos and everything else will be put to an end. And I'm going to bring peace. Even peace to Moab. That even through all this, God's still going to bring about peace to the rest of the world. Okay? And so the coming Messiah isn't just something for Israel, it's a savior for all. All right? Getting into chapter 17 there, because we're going to go ahead and get through chapters 18 and 19. We're going to just really briefly cover that this morning. So Israel gets mentioned with the prophecy against Aram, and they get mentioned because of the fact that they align themselves with the Arameans. Okay? And so the NSV Study Bible actually also points out, in verse 3 of chapter 17, it says, The remnant of Aram will be like the glory of the Israelites. Does that sound good or bad? What do you guys think? Good or bad? Raise your hand if you think it sounds good. Raise your hand if you think it sounds bad. Okay? Why does it sound bad? Maddie, you raise your hand. Why do you think it sounds bad?
Reread it.
All right.
I'm catching on to something bad.
Okay, good. It says, the fortified city will disappear from Ephraim, and royal power from Damascus. The remnant of Aram will be like the glory of the Israelites, declares the Lord Almighty. But it sounds bad.
Yeah.
All right, does anybody else want to take a shot at why it sounds bad?
There's a vibe to it. It sounds good, like the words mean that it's something good, but then there's a feeling like there's a twist to it.
But it's
Okay.
in the best.
Okay. So Riley, when I read this, I thought the same thing as you. It seemed good, but the actual message is bad. So for those of you that were reading, that heard that and said, that doesn't sound too good, it's basically sarcasm, okay? Because what's being said is, is God going to just let Israel continue to prosper? Caitlin, is God going to let Israel continue to prosper? No. What's he going to do? Huh?
Shave their beards.
Yeah. Who's coming after Israel? Specific nation. Who's coming after Israel?
Syria.
Assyria. Okay. All right. Assyria is coming after Israel, right? And Israel is going to be dispersed among the nations. There's only going to be a remnant left, right? And so he's saying the same thing about Aram. The remnant of Aram will be like the glory of the Israelites. There won't be much of anything left. Okay? Now, there is still good news in there, though, because God could totally wipe out the Arameans, right? Are they his promised people? No. So God could totally wipe out the Arameans. But he's saying there's going to be left a what? A remnant. There you go. This theme of remnant runs throughout the Bible of people that are left after the judgment. Okay? And God is specifically saying, even for the Arameans, even for the Moabites, there will be a people left that God is looking to save and redeem. Okay? So that's chapter 17. Another thing that is really interesting to see in chapter 17 is verses 12 through 13. We talked in chapter 8 about how God uses this image of chaotic waters to represent the nations. You know, each one keeps crushing into the next one and becoming bigger and bigger. And that's, he brings that up again in verses 12 through 13. Chapters 18 through 19, God sends judgment against Cush and Egypt. Okay, now, I always thought that Cush was just another name for Egypt. Apparently it's not. Okay? Apparently Cush was a nation that was like next door to Egypt. It's also called Ethiopia. But it's not like modern day Ethiopia that I believe is further south. It was like right next door. Okay? And so Cush is usually lumped together with Egypt when you see the different prophecies against it. But they were actually two different groups for the most part. Now, one thing that I did find out is that eventually Cush actually takes Egypt out, and they kind of become the 25th dynasty in the Egyptian kingdom. But in chapter 18, it specifically starts off by saying, "Go, swift messengers, to a people tall and smooth-skinned, to a people feared far and wide, an aggressive nation of strange speech." Okay, tall and smooth-skinned. We just talked about this a little bit ago. Most Near Eastern peoples like their beards. Did Egyptians have beards? No, they did not. Yeah, It wasn't even hair. It was something that they like glued essentially to their chins. They didn't like facial hair at all. Okay? And so remember, when Joseph gets sent away by his brothers, Joseph has been wearing a beard his whole, time that they've known him. He gets sent away to the Egyptians, and they're like, "Nah, we don't like that," and they shave him. Okay? And so to blend in with the Egyptians, when he becomes, part of the court, he keeps his face cleanly shaved. Okay? Cush and Egyptians both liked clean-shaven people. Okay? And so that's what's being said. And so it starts off by saying this judgment is against Cush and Egypt. Okay? But it's really interesting too, because at the end of it, it says, at that time, gifts will be brought to the Lord Almighty from a people tall and smooth-skinned, from a people feared far and wide, an aggressive nation of strange speech. It's repeating the phrase from the beginning, specifically to show that these people who are going to be judged, God is also looking to redeem. God is always looking to redeem. Okay? And in chapter 19, he's going to get into Egypt, and he's going to talk about the devastation he's going to bring on them. You can look through verses 5 through 10, and God's going to talk about the devastation, the drought he's going to bring on the Nile. And that's their life source in Egypt, is the Nile. They would dig out canals from the Nile River so that when it flooded over, it would go into the canals and feed all their livestock. It would feed all their plants and everything. And God's is saying, I'm going to dry it all out. There's not going to be a drop left in it. And that's going to devastate the Egyptians. Okay? But the biggest thing to read through all of this is that God fully intends to judge the world for its sins. But is he still concerned about them? Yes. He's crying out. Because he absolutely does not want to see them have to undergo punishment. He wants them to live the way that they're supposed to. And he hates the fact that he's got to. But if he's going to be just and righteous, then he has to. And so he's announcing the coming punishment, but he's also trying to say, I don't want to do this if I don't have to. And eventually he's going to bring Christ to take on the sin if they'll accept it. This is why Jesus gets so excited when some Greeks come up to one of his disciples and say, hey, we'd like to see Jesus. And Jesus, when he's told about this, he doesn't even really answer the question of if they can come and see him. He just starts going, God, this is what we've been looking for this whole time. For the rest of the world to come and see you. And that's why Jesus gets so excited, is because this is exactly what he's been working for. So God will judge the world, but he wants to try and offer his grace and redemption. Our role as participants in the kingdom is to speak love to those who don't know him. Okay, so tonight, after evening worship, we're going to go straight over to Randy and Nancy's house for Capture the Flag. They're going to do some s'mores and hot dogs and such for us as well. Dress warm, though. It's going to be like 30 degrees. Next Sunday, we've got guy-girl time. Guys, we're going to need to meet at the building at 1:15 so we can head up to Clovis for knocker balls. Girls, I didn't even finish putting that note in there. Girls, you're going to go to get your manicure thing. So I'll get more details about that out to you all later. If you have not signed up for Encounter LE, make sure you get signed up for Encounter LE. Also, during the cleanup yesterday, I found the dodgeballs or kickballs or whatever outside, just sitting outside. So whoever was playing with the dodgeballs last, we got to start putting stuff away, okay? In fact, just in general, the whole room over there is kind of a wreck. There's the boomsticks just kind of sitting out, a bunch of paddles and everything else. We need to start putting stuff away. The last thing I got to say before I let you guys go is at the end of service, Will's going to let you guys know when, but he'll let you guys know when to get up, and I need you guys to go to the kitchen at the end of service when Will tells you to go to get some tea made. Okay? Get some tea and everything else drinks start poured and all that good stuff. Okay.
Absolutely.
All right.
Is there lunch?
Other than that, yes, lunch tomorrow's in Dora,
No, they just wanted decoration.
and then green chili stew on Tuesday. So make sure to get people here. All right. Love you guys.
Why are we making team stuff again?
It'll be explained in worship.
Okay, because I was like, that was not for a while after church. I didn't know we were doing
Yeah. No, you're good.
I was like, we didn't need to start at 3 until we got back to the lunch.
Where's my mouse?
Oh, Nick Bundy.